Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Happy Monday.
Dang it.
Oh, you beat us to it. Best day of the week.
Hi, good morning.
Sure is. No arguments from me.
No, not at all. Happy Monday. How's the weekend, everybody? Jamie, welcome back. How's your weekend? How are you feeling?
Thanks for having me. I'm sore. Spent the weekend at our short-term rental trying to get it set up to start accommodating travelers. Had my 6-year-old up there with me helping, and then my sister and her 3-year-old showed up, and it was a blast.
You got to get ready for all those leaf peepers.
And in my market, peak season is September and October, and I'm 5 days for September, and that was my goal. And I'm not going to meet it, but we're going to be close.
Take a couple days off work. And yeah, I mean, probably my favorite term in the industry is leaf peepers.
Yeah.
So gotta get ready for them.
And I feel like you're going to have to build a second swing set, because to have one at the STR and not in your own backyard, that's just crushing.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I want to get the kids excited about going up there. So, yeah, they're already complaining. Yeah, they're complaining that our short-term rental is nicer than our own house, and that they want to live there full time, and we're not even done. So
that's when I was growing up, we have like our place in the Adirondacks on a lake, and I used to be like, I want a pool, blah blah blah, and my mom was like, you have a pool, it's just 5 hours away, and I hate that. That was the party line. She never caved.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great chance to teach your kids about ROI as well. So.
Those lessons that really stick with them when they're young.
Yeah.
We did a lemonade stand this weekend, and Oliver was like, how much should it cost? Or I asked him, and he's like, $10. And I was like, well, when you keep prices really high, demand is going to be really low. But if you shift them down, so we agreed on $1, but the first person that stopped, they go, how much is it? And Ollie shouts out, $5. And they're like, wow, that's expensive. I'll take one. So yeah, it was a
dynamic pricing.
And then we encouraged him to continue to lower the price a little bit. So we settled in the neighborhood of $1 or $2 per cup. But it was never the same price. He told one person it's $5 or a quarter, whichever one you want. I was like, okay. He really has no concept of money yet. So.
Back when life was easy. The good old days.
Stands. It was fun. Fun to watch the 5-year-old and his little neighbor friend.
Love it. You guys all sound like you had lovely weekends with the kids. And Brandy, did you do anything fun with kids or no?
No, there were no children involved in my weekend, which was great.
Yeah.
No, but actually, a lot of places have restaurant week. Miami does Miami Spice, which is restaurant week, but for all of August and September to like encourage people to go out. And so we went and tried this like Michelin star French restaurant near our house, and you get like a prefix menu. It's pretty good. Not bad. Nice little Sunday afternoon treat kind of thing.
Sounds super lovely. Super lovely. Big fan.
Fan.
But before we get in, let's prep the topics. Jamie, what are we gonna get the listeners today? What are we looking at from the data perspective?
Yeah, and it kind of feels like you guys are just going to pepper me with questions on what's happening in the broader travel ecosystem, and I'm going to try my best to answer them all.
Why is the data narrative not lining up with what everyone feels and sees in their own businesses? That's the topic of today.
Let's do it.
Well, before we get to today's topic, This episode is brought to you by our friends at Marriott Homes and Villas, or Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy. My apologies there. If you are aiming to take your vacation rental to the next level, Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy is where you need to be. With a reputation for excellence and a global reach, Marriott Bonvoy connects your properties to millions of travelers who expect the very best. Now, listing your home with Homes and Villas isn't just a platform, it's a partnership with a brand that stands for quality. You'll gain access to over 200 million loyal Bonvoy members looking for unique and luxurious stays just like yours. So whether you have 30 properties or close to, this is your chance to increase visibility and revenue to the backing with the backing of a trusted name. If you're interested, go to Homes and Villas by Marriott. Yeah, homesandvillasbymarriott.com. Explore how you can bring your properties to a whole new audience. Don't wait. Seize this opportunity today. And now we're back to the episode. All right, Jamie.
All right, Jamie. So similar to inflation, when we look at backwards looking inflation numbers, lately, 3.5%, it's only 50% above what we are targeting at 2% nationally. But everyone just feels inflation heavily every time you go anywhere. And similarly, we're looking at some AirDNA data this morning, and the numbers generally look okay, but everyone that I've talked to is feeling it this year, particularly, and this summer's been harder. So how do we square that peg?
Well, let's start with your first comment around inflation. CPI numbers came out 2 weeks ago, and we got a 2 handle. So it was 2.9% year over year, and we've been looking for 2% for a long time. And then Jerome Powell had his annual speech at Jackson Hole last Friday, and I love it. He said the time has come for policy to adjust. That means interest rates are coming down. And then he said further, we do not seek or welcome further cooling in labor market conditions. So he realizes that the economy is getting weaker. Unemployment has increased by 1% over the past year, and that there is some cracks forming in the overall economy. And that's the tee up of, we are seeing some weakness in broader travel. And I was just at the Hotel Data Conference 2 weeks ago, and it was amazing to get sort of the broad view across total accommodation, what's happening. And the theme there was bifurcation. So there are parts of the travel industry that are doing really well, and there are parts that are doing not very well. And the clearest in the hotel industry right now is when you look at the data by chain scale, where you see luxury chains growing demand at 5% year over year. And when you look at economy chains, seeing a decline in demand by about 5%. And then in between, for mid-scale, it's about flat. So you look at broader short-term rentals right now, and we cut our data in the same ways of trying to create these price tiers to be able to analyze demand. And when we look at lower tier short-term rental performance, that is properties that are sort of making them operating at lower ADRs, sort of attractive to lower tier consumers. And this is controlling for bedroom counts. So we're looking at lowest price 5 bedrooms, lowest price 1 bedrooms. We actually see a decline in demand in the coastal and mountain areas and very weak demand in urban and suburban areas. So in an industry where outside of COVID, we see demand growing pretty much every single year in short-term rentals, to actually see declines in demand right now in those sectors is pretty stark and alarming in some ways. But then in the same way, when you look at short-term rental performance at the upper tiers, when we look at coastal mountain, when we look at urban suburban, we're seeing 3, 4, 5, 6% growth across the board. And then when we actually look at the summer, and we see slightly better performance at the upper tiers. So those that have the money to travel still have pent-up savings from the pandemic, are not seeing the impacts on their jobs. They're still seeing relatively strong wage gains. their homes are fixed in at low rates. Like those type of consumers are doing really well. And then on the opposite side, those consumers that are renting, they see the price to rent go up every single year. Right now, going up pretty substantially. They see an increases in food prices, which is a larger share. They see and the interest rates they're paying their credit card debt continue to go up. So we're seeing a bifurcation in the economy that's absolutely impacting industry performance.
So basically, if you're a property management company without exposure to larger luxury properties, you're missing out, and you need that within the portfolio to help mitigate some risks.
Yeah, and those one of the other ways we sort of dissected the data, because Airbnb made it really clear on their earnings call. They're like, when we look across the U.S., like overall things are, but when you look at homes that accommodate 5, 6, 7 plus travelers, those are the ones seeing the greatest demand. And when we break out our data, like looking at even large cities where we've seen some of the weakest performance, you look at private room, shared rooms, demand down 10%. Studio 1 bedrooms, we're seeing anywhere from 2 to 3% increase in demand. And then when you look at 4+ bedroom properties, we're seeing demand growth anywhere from 10 to 15% this summer. So the larger the home, the better performance. We hadn't really been talking about that trend since COVID, where it was like all family travel, private shared 1-2 bedroom properties just getting crushed. But now we've sort of come back into this realm where the larger home, the better performance. And I feel like this is the new phase where short-term rentals that are like just where the product beats hotels are the ones doing the best. Those amenitizing the right ways, those that can accommodate families, group travel in ways that the product is just better than the alternative. That's where short-term rentals are doing well right now.
Well, and I also think we had this kind of this emergence of STRs during COVID. People that had never really participated in the space were getting used to it, and now maybe that's leveled out. And so you have people that now know all the options that they have to travel. So when they're going with their big groups and their families, they're going STR, but for anything else, business or, just couple travel or whatever, they're going to stay in the hotels. And I think I wish it was as easy as just adding one nice property to your portfolio to make this all better. But those operations are significantly different. Like luxury homes require, if you have a pickleball court and a tennis court and a big, 3 hot tubs or whatever it is, like all that requires so much more maintenance and attention. So it can be hard if you're one of these property management companies that's been focusing on servicing the budget end of the travelers. I think that's probably a very difficult segment to reach higher than that.
Yeah, so, and when you look at and the areas that are doing well, like the numbers I track, and I think Michael, you're tracking them too, like TSA throughput numbers, like how many people are actually flying on any given day. Like we reached a record high, over 3 million people flying on July 7th, just after the 4th of July holiday. We're up in August over 5% compared to last year, record highs in terms of travel. We were up 5% in July. So this trend continues. And another theme at the hotel conference was around how well just business, corporate transit, group travel is doing. And that really slots into the upscale, upper upscale, sort of big box hotels. And then, and those are just crushing it. Like they're seeing, and you heard it on the hotel earnings calls, where they're calling and pre-bookings for big conferences are well ahead of budget, that they're just seeing a really strong performance there. So, and then you listen to like the calls for Wyndham or Choice, and it's like, ooh, like they're clearly not seeing the demand because they do not have the same exposure to the business and group travel.
So Jamie, on the luxury and budget hotel side, the flags seem to be in an arms race, and it's like every week we see a new announcement, whether it's just a licensing deal like Sonder just had,
Mhm.
or a full out acquisition like I believe the Graduate or the Standard. I think the Standard maybe was just bought by Hyatt.
Standard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's these experiential brands that probably fall into the luxury category, but it seems like an arms race. Does it show up in the data? And if so, can we maybe bifurcate data on traditional luxury versus more experiential luxury?
I'll say the name of the game for both the large hotel brands and the OTAs for the next year or two is going to be, and it's supply acquisition, right? And we're still in this realm of high interest rates, really hard to get new construction done in the hotel space, hard to get new construction done in the home space right now. It's just in this interest rate environment, like it's hard to build new. So how are they going to acquire supply? It's either through acquiring brands or and conversion. And on the upper tier, it's really hard in a lot of ways to convert up of taking a brand, unless you're converting it from one of your competitors to your own, to get in and then do all the renovation necessary to meet your brand standards. It's much easier just to go out and find brands that sort of meet your brand ethos, acquire them, bring them into the ecosystem. And this whole loyalty distribution play where they're not actually buying the brand, they're just signing an agreement with them, is actually a very low capital intensive play. Like, and very low key count or
Both sides. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a win for Marriott. It's a win for Hyatt, win for Hilton as they sort of add this inventory, as they're able to grow it without having to go through the development of hotels, of giving big key cash to help in the construction of those properties and can grow their overall inventory. So I would say I'd expect more of this. If you're an independent brand that's attractive to a Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, like this is probably a good time for you.
Cash
And
out.
either signing an agreement, licensing agreement like Sonder did, or selling entirely like we saw with Standard.
20 years was the Sonder deal. That's just, it's a mind-blowingly long amount of time in my feeble brain.
With 2 5-year options too.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that part.
Wow. Yeah. I thought one of the interesting graphs you shared with us off camera, which just had the private and shared room demand in large cities, which is where kind of that, I mean, that's a direct Airbnb, product category. And I'm just, and this is maybe an anecdotal question, but like the people that kind of desire to have a shared room or stay in somebody's home while they're still there, I feel like that those people are probably just going to stay in hostels. If you're in a large city, that's like the other, I can see this category. I mean, it had the steepest decline out of the other, all the categories present. And I would be very shocked if that doesn't continue, because I think if you're looking at, you're going to spend $70 to stay in someone's extra bedroom when you could pay $70 and stay in maybe like a nicer hostel. I think that those product categories might compete with themselves. And I wonder if Airbnb will just hold on to that for as long as possible, because it's like their baby that, they started with.
Part of their PR story. Yeah.
Exactly.
They will never let that go.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, it's just stark. You have they're down 10% in large cities, and then studios are up like around 3%. So like that's a big demand gap in between those two product types, which are basically the same thing. A studio is just one room,
Yeah, and that's said as someone in a city with hostels, and which
Yes.
in the US and many cities around the world, there just isn't that hostel budget option. So I think we're in this part of the cycle now where, and if the economy further deteriorated and people were really looking for budget type travel options, private and shared rooms might have a return. But we're now a year after Airbnb relaunched rooms, And we've seen demand then decline anywhere from 5, 10, 15%, depending on the market. So it's clearly not resonating with consumers. It's not resonating with people that are adding supply. I actually just saw an ad this morning from Airbnb where it was like, oh, your kid left for college. Now you got a room you can rent out on Airbnb. And that whole concept to me is like, and is that really what's going to drive supply for Airbnb going forward? Probably
Also,
not. Yeah.
you're telling an empty nester who's just finally had their house empty after 18, 19 years of hell, probably, because not, raising kids isn't great or probably easy. But yeah, just like that's exactly what I want to do. Airbnb. I want to empty nest and then just fill it with strangers. Sounds like a great idea.
I've
But-
stayed in many a private rooms where the reason why they did it though was because their kids left from college and they needed something to do. So not too crazy.
Yeah, need something to do.
They're
also
leaning
be
into
like-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
They know the data.
I think it's just interesting because this is one of the only platforms where that room type exists. So as a consumer, when you're shopping around, you're not comparing apples to apples across the board. Because I don't think you can do that on booking.com or anything on any other major OTAs. So that you might just be losing people because they're not getting, the number of times I've booked a private room on purpose is way less than the number of times I accidentally booked a private room. And in my college days, just showing up and being like, oh no, the guy's staying here. We're just in his apartment. So, I'll just,
Yeah,
it'll be,
my only shared room experience was actually in Miami. And that was 2012. And it was
a time.
Yeah. It was it was
Yeah.
during Ultra Music Fest. It was a bed or it was a futon.
There you go. That's
Not
all you
even a
need at that time.
I forgot where I was going to go.
But maybe I'll make one more point on terms of looking at the data and perceived weakness or actual weakness, and then what's actually happening. So we did a deep dive on markets that seem to be gaining share relative to hotels. And on the surface, it actually looked like the demand was relatively weak in short-term rentals too. Hotel demand was down like 5% in these markets. Short-term rental demand was up, albeit slightly, and it still looked like overall demand for travel to these markets was actually down. But then when we actually manipulated the data on a room night basis, so counting a 5-bedroom home as 5 nights instead of just 1, we actually saw demand was flat. And when you actually look at it on a price per room basis, as opposed to a price per listing basis, and then compare that to hotels, it's like maybe what we're seeing is short-term rentals are that next tier lower than hotels. Of if I'm going to this area, I'm looking to save money, and the hotels price me out, but I could rent a 4, 5, 6, 7-bedroom property and it saved me money overall. Like, yeah, maybe it's still 1,000-bedroom home, and that seems like a lot of money. But if I'm traveling with 3 other couples or 2 families, like if you actually compare it on how many hotel rooms I'd have to book and then what that price would be, and then the average price that I would pay in a short-term rental, I'm actually saving some money there. And that's sort of leading in with the high demand in the larger bedroom properties, that this could be the shift that we're seeing happening. And the reason for it is that cost conscious consumer looking for ways to save money right now.
Yeah, I think also part of the picture that we don't have, it would be very difficult to, I think, but is there's different layers to this of, why a lot of property managers are feeling maybe a squeeze, because you have maybe some increased demand, but what do the ADRs in your market look like? And then also, what do your costs look like? Because you could be having decent revenues, but I think, labor costs have gone up significantly, and all of the costs it takes to run the business. So even if you're doing better or on par with the year before, it could be that bottom line where you're not seeing the benefits of that maybe stable or slightly growing revenue.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's very apparent in the data is just the further deterioration of lead times. So people
Yeah.
are booking closer to the stay. And in terms of revenue management, that makes it very hard to manage your inventory, especially when you have such unique inventory. You're used to getting booked 2 months in advance. Now you get past that 2-month period, you're still not booked. You're getting 5 weeks, 4 weeks out. And it's like, oh my goodness, am I going to get booked? How far do I need to drop my rates? And we are seeing a continued weakness on the rate side, which I think is a direct result of the shorter booking lead times.
Is it just poor revenue management strategies? Like, the traditional wisdom be damned if, as you get closer to the stay and you're still vacant, you typically drop prices, so it erodes ADRs. Or is it the market? Like, is it a blend?
I think you've got owner revenue management strategies and you have owner management strategies. And that's what, when I'm talking with operators, it's like getting comfortable with your strategy, maybe what your risk tolerance is, and then getting comfortable with your owner's risk tolerance of them maybe willing to give up 3, 4, 5% on rate if they're guaranteed that their property is going to get booked during peak season. Because shoulder season, be damn, maybe, like, if you're not running high occupancies, if your unit isn't getting booked during peak season, like, you're not going to meet the revenue expectations that you have for that property. And I think what we're seeing now is maybe more and more owners, property managers willing to give up some on rate just to make sure those properties are getting booked. And that's where our industry really differs from hotels, where you can manage your sort of unit inventory to maximize revenue and you can have 5, 10%, even 20% of inventory going left unsold. But if in the short-term rental industry, for an owner, if their one unit's not getting sold, that's all their inventory for them, right? And so I do think that a varying revenue management strategy from the hotel industry is warranted, given this sort of unique ownership structure and inventory that's out there.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we kind of have some of the worst parts of both worlds in the urban markets, because you have basically kind of hotel products, but you still have that's a landlord, right, that owns the building. And there's some, this is the same with traditional homes. You have some owners who are like, I get like a wire and in the bank account every month, and I don't really care. And then you have some that are like, I am checking every single rate every single day. And people have emotional attachments to these properties, and they're saying like, I expect the ADRs to be this higher. Like, you should be raising. It's like, yeah, it would be so great if we could just raise rates like that. That would be awesome. But it's really trying to bring people along for, like, you, especially like for us, we're kind of the opposite of most people. Like, August and September are our lowest months in the year, especially August. And so it's like, it's like kind of take what you can get territory out here. And so not being so picky. And it is even like people that have been in this industry for a long time, I feel like their vision just goes like myopic on a monthly basis. And it's like, let's zoom out and make sure that you're seeing, like, let's maximize all the returns we can get for you in a year, and not just focusing on like what the rates are next Tuesday. But I think that's an age-old struggle in our industry.
Yeah. And also knowing your market, like the experience that you have of knowing, like, if I drop rate, is that actually going to induce demand? Or am I just dropping rate and I'm just going to get lower? The number of people booking is constant. Like, whether I change the rate or not, it's not going to matter in terms of how many people I'm going to book. So I might as well just keep rate where it's at, and we maximize the revenue for the properties that are going to get booked.
And this exact discussion is why we've seen a lot of people in short-term rentals move into boutique hotels as well. They get total control, one neck to squeeze, which is their own. So it's an interesting trend that I continue to see more and more. And I know there's a lot of people that are still pure play short-term rentals that are becoming more and more interested in the boutique hotel space.
Well,
True.
so as we're wrapping up the summer, Jamie, do you have any predictions for how the rest of the year is going to go? Is there anything in the data that's giving you some confidence in trends for the rest of the year?
And one thing that just makes me really excited for operators out there is the further deceleration in supply growth. Like, if demand is going to be weak, and all else held equal, if we're having 5% supply growth and not 10, 15, 20% supply growth, like, that's actually kind of nice, right? And so we've seen that decelerate throughout the year. Yes, we started with Jerome Powell saying that he's going to lower interest rates, but the lag from when interest rates start to lower to when people start making interest or purchase decisions and get properties listed, we're not looking for that in 2025 until that starts to happen, maybe a reacceleration in supply growth. So I think for the back half of the year, a further deceleration in supply growth. In urban areas, we're actually seeing a supply decline. And the lack of recovery there for a lot of operators has just meant that they're going to throw in the towel. So urbans typically see the most churn throughout the year just because of so many people doing it occasionally, part-time basis. But we do see maybe higher levels of churn in urban areas. We're actually seeing lower levels of churn in coastal mountain areas. But that does make it maybe good for the sort of last man standing in the industry in these urban markets, that you're able to maybe see some occupancy increases and accommodate more travelers going forward. So it's a trend to watch. We're now 1 year past New York's law going into effect. So that was still massive impact on that market, one of the biggest markets in the country. We're still seeing an 83% decline in available short-term rental listings. So that's really impacted that market. But it's not only New York, it's quite a few other cities right now that are seeing declines as well.
Well, we'll
Gets you
see. I'm
thinking.
still I still have this 8,000 plus unit avalanche of supply coming our way in Miami. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, just fingers crossed that it doesn't all happen at once. Like you said, I don't think it will, but hopefully it's a nice slow trickle for you instead of a baptism by fire type situation. Love it. Well, thanks, Jamie, for coming back on and obviously sharing the data with all of us. I know there's a lot of moving pieces, but overall sounds not too bad. I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, I think
still.
Overall, the consumer's healthy. Like, we're still seeing consumer spending up. We're still seeing incomes from travelers growing more than inflation. Like, yes, there's some cracks happening on the lower end, but it's not. There's no reason to panic right now. I mean, overall, there's more people traveling today than they were the same time last year. It's just the mix of what type of units they're traveling in, the cities that they're going to, is sort of changing. So there'll be some winners and losers as that plays out, but we're not calling for recession. I don't think there's one coming anytime soon.
So the sky is not falling, people. Not yet. Not yet.
Is that the most optimistic way to end it?
Hey, Jamie, are you forgetting that it's an election season? So
yeah.
Let's just live in a happy place for today, for this week. Optimism for the week.
Yeah, there we go. Brandy likes to leave it on a positive note here. So as we wrap up the show, thank you to all of our live listeners for tuning in, being part of the show. We really appreciate it. For all the listeners that listen to the replay, like and subscribe. And of course, a big shout out to our partners and sponsors at Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy and of course Sojo. So thank you guys for partnering with the show. And like always, we'll see you guys again next week.